Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Great America Show. It's great to have you with us. Thanks so much for joining us today. It's officially 1 month until President Trump heads back to the Oval Office. January 20th will he be sworn in and well on his way to making America great again. We're just a few days from Christmas, and Mike Johnson seems to be the gift that keeps on giving. He's gotten himself into another pickle again. He promised us time and time again that he wouldn't get us into one of these situations where we're in the 11th hour, the end of December, going into the new year, and we've got to pass a budget, or in this case, a continuing resolution, a CR, as he likes to call it, or as they like to call it in D.C. The first one, Johnson proposed over 1,500 pages of nonsense. You go through some of the main points in it. Now, I'll be honest with you, I didn't read the 1,500 pages because I didn't have 4 days to read it. Or 3 days to read it. But you go through some of the main points through it, and there's just so much nonsense in it, whether it be provisions that would stifle RFK Jr. from doing certain things when he's sworn in as HHS secretary. Now, this CR would have went through March if passed this first one that Johnson proposed. You then look at some other provisions that were in it, and one of them let Congress block subpoenas for House data, including emails potentially preventing any investigation into the January 6th committee. Now, why would Mike Johnson have anything to do with a bill that would do something like that? Johnson followed Donald Trump around like a puppy dog for the last few months, followed him to UFC events, jumped in photo bombs on the Trump Force One, acted like he was President Trump's best friend. But why would Mike Johnson sit here and try to stab President Trump in the back just a month before he's set to be sworn back into office and try to sneak through a CR like we've seen him try to do on this first one? President Trump, not happy about what Mike Johnson tried to pull, asked by a reporter from NBC, Garrett Hackey, does he still have confidence, meaning President Trump confidence in Mike Johnson? President Trump saying, quote, "We'll see. What they had yesterday was unacceptable," referring to Speaker Johnson's obviously continuing resolution. Quote, "In many ways, it was unacceptable. It's a Democratic trap." That doesn't sound like a man. President Trump is very direct with his words. We all know that. That doesn't sound like a man who's got much confidence in Mike Johnson. So we'll see on January 3rd when it comes time for Speaker's election if Mike Johnson will be back in his job as Speaker. The budget fight was one. The debt ceiling was one that Lou knew very much about. An economist by trade, spoke about it often. Just about a year ago, we were in this very similar situation. Lou joined our friend John Solomon and Amanda Head over on Just the News on Real America's Voice, and he had this to say. I want to roll this clip for you if we can, just so you can see how ahead of the game Lou was, how on top of the game Lou was, and how in tune he was. This is it from a year ago, and it still rings true, the similarities to now today. Take a listen.
How important is it that they come back in January and get a down payment on reducing the national deficit, the national debt?
I have to say, and this may surprise you, John, Amanda, I'm not sure that the down payment is important as the way in which they proceed. They should be in regular order. They should be moving these appropriations bills forward individually, single subject bills, and they should do. I would love it if they could reduce the federal spending. I'm doubtful right now. I am not convinced that Speaker Johnson is sufficiently conservative or sufficiently committed to doing what is, as you put it there, the right thing, which is to reduce federal spending. But we're not. I just don't believe we're going to see it, and I will settle for at least an organized and informed debate and amendments and appropriations that move forward. I can't even now. I can't believe that they didn't at least get that done last year. This Congress is under immense pressure to prove themselves. This speaker right now is, in my opinion, he's done some things that are great, including getting his conference to vote unanimously on the impeachment inquiry. I think that was a major achievement. On the others, including slipping in the 702 section, 702 of the FISA Act into a must-pass bill like NDAA, I find that reprehensible, frankly.
Yeah.
Isn't that something, folks? That was a year, and may Lou's soul rest in peace. We miss him every single day on the show. I know you guys miss him. I certainly miss him. I miss my best friend. But isn't it interesting now that we look almost a year later? That was in January of 2024, so earlier this year. Isn't it amazing we look now, like I said, 11 months later, and the similarities we find ourselves in? Mike Johnson ran. He promised us that we were going to get 12 appropriations bills. We were going to get these things through. There was going to be no issues. He doesn't have one of them ready right now. The man's been in office for some time now. Has no plan. What happened to the single subject bills like Lou mentioned? Mike Johnson promised us we were not getting any more of these nonsensical 1,500-page bills that nobody reads, that are put together by Mitch McConnell and Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries, and somehow the Republicans, and I say Republicans because Mitch McConnell's not a Republican, but somehow the Republicans are never involved in authoring these bills, and they're expected to vote on them without reading them, like we're all stupid. But the tides are turning. I believe the American people are far more awake, and I won't say smarter because the average American person is smart, but the folks are waking up. The average American is waking up now to the deception of what's being done to us. Like I said earlier, Mike Johnson trying to pull an 11th hour move here just before they head off on Christmas recess. I know it's the time of giving. I know it's the time of the year where we're supposed to be giving, and we're just 5 days from Christmas. But Mike Johnson trying to stab President Trump in the back just 5 days before Christmas, just 2 weeks before his speaker election is supposed to take place on January 3rd. I don't think it's puts Mike Johnson in a very good place right now with President Trump. I don't think it puts Mike Johnson in a very good place right now with the American people. It seems the conference is highly split on who supports Johnson and who doesn't. I think there's a big faction of the conference based on people I speak to in D.C. who don't trust Mike Johnson, and they shouldn't. Mike Johnson has yet to tell us a truth. What happened to those January 6 tapes that Mike Johnson was giving us? You know, they were editing out the faces of folks like it made a difference. The FBI got and the DOJ got every person they wanted, even the people who did nothing wrong. They got those folks too. But Mike Johnson now, a year later, still editing out the faces of those folks who are in those January 6 tapes, those hundreds of January 6 political prisoners who are hopefully done right by on January 20th. And I believe President Trump is a man of his word. I know President Trump is a man of his word, and I'm highly confident those folks are going to get out. But what about those folks who were wrongly accused, who were overcharged on January 6th, and Mike Johnson still holding back those tapes so he can edit out some images and blur out some images? We're not buying it anymore, Mike Johnson. The American people, the Republicans, are far too smart for your nonsense. And there's folks in the conference, in the Republican conference, the Andy Biggs, who's going to be our guest here in just a few moments, the Andy Biggs of the world, the Matt Rosenthals of the world, the Eli Cranes of the world, the Anna Paulina Lunas of the world, the MTGs. You go down the list of these folks who are calling out Mike Johnson and his rhino counterparts for trying to do things like this in the 11th hour. It's wrong. It's wrong to do to the American people. It's wrong to do to the American voter. The American people just gave the Republicans a resounding victory on November 5th, an overwhelming majority, giving them back the Senate, giving them a majority in the House, giving them the presidency, maybe giving them another seat or two on the Supreme Court. And this is how you treat the American people, Mike Johnson? This is what you do to the American people who voted your party back into power, who gave you guys back the power of the purse, who gave you guys back the power of the subpoena. This is how you treat the American people. This is how you treat President Trump, a man who's supposed to be your friend. President Trump, who goes through so much on a daily basis, having to deal with Mike Johnson, having to do Mike Johnson's job for him, sending J.D. Vance to go ahead and negotiate for him. We now know how good of a negotiator J.D. Vance is, able to go to D.C. and get this thing straightened out in just a day. But the fact that we have to go to those distances, the fact that Mike Johnson is just I don't even know how to say it nicely. I guess the nicest way to put it is incompetent. Incompetent and able to do his job, and incompetent in his duty as a Republican leader. I think as we reflect over Christmas time here, and I hope and I know there's going to be some members who are going to reflect on it as well. I'm not entirely sure. As a matter of fact, I'm probably pretty certain that Mike Johnson is not the man who needs to be running the Republican Party. Now, I don't know who it is. I would love to see Elon Musk or Vivek Ramaswamy go ahead in there and be Speaker of the House for 6 months, get President Trump's agenda jump-started and ready to roll and rip-roaring, and then pass it on to someone who's competent in the House. But Mike Johnson is running like a madman right now, doing whatever he wants, unchecked. And he's got to be stopped immediately before he gets this party into trouble, before he gets America into trouble. The days of blank checks are over. The days of writing checks for DEI and woke ideologies and transgenderism and vaccines, mandatory vaccines in the military, those days are over, folks. The totalitarian communism Marxist playbook, it was voted out on November 5th. Those days are over. So I don't know if Mike Johnson got the memo, but he better think long and hard while he's home for Christmas break with his family about what he wants for this country and what he wants for the Republican Party, because his days are numbered here. We can't let him. He needs to have a tight leash. We cannot let this man run free like Paul Ryan did and ruin the MAGA agenda. President Trump's record-breaking election. We can't let him ruin that. We can't let the American people lose distrust and lose trust in the Republican Party because of one man. So I'm calling on all members of Congress, Republicans, to hold this man's feet to the fire. And when you're home for Christmas break, do some reflecting over it and come to your senses, as I have. Mike Johnson is not the man to run the party, and get your act together before it's too late. This is the Trump party. This is the MAGA party. Don't take my word for it. Take the voters' word for it. Because the only reason that we have a majority in the Senate now, and we kept a majority in the House, is because of Donald J. Trump and everyone he pulled along the finish line with him. Don't you ever forget that as a member of Congress, as a senator. Donald Trump brought you folks to the party. Now you dance. It's simple as that. Americans voted for MAGA, and that's what they're going to get. Either get on board or get out of the way. Your elections are in 2 years. Get on board or get out of the way. Turning to some other news, truth, justice, and the American way seems to be prevailing in this country, as I say every day since November 5th. The Georgia Court of Appeals has disqualified Fani Willis from presiding over President Trump's case in Georgia. The appeals court writing, quote, after carefully considering the trial court's finding and its order, we conclude that it erred by failing to disqualify DA Willis and her office. The remedy crafted by the trial court to prevent an ongoing appearance of impropriety did nothing to address the appearance of impropriety that existed at the time when DA Willis was exercising her broad pretrial discretion about who to prosecute and what charges to bring. While we recognize that it's an appearance of impropriety, generally it's not enough to support disqualification. This is the rare case in which disqualification is mandatory, and no other remedy will suffice to restore public's confidence in the integrity of these proceedings. Now, it's a move in the right direction to disqualify Fani Willis, but the appeals court did fail to throw out that case altogether. Willis has been dealt loss after loss, losing the rapper case, Young Thug case down there, a man that they got on RICO who they were trying to put in jail for 100 years. He's now taken a plea, I think, for like 10 or 20 years on probation, no jail time. Willis's office demanded that Young Thug, the rapper, admit to all the crimes that she alleged. He says no. And they said, well, there's no deal on the table. And Young Thug's lawyer said, okay, we'll leave it up to the judge. And the judge sided with Young Thug and said, you don't have to admit to anything. Here's your probation time. So Fani's been dealt blow after blow. I think it's only a matter of time now before that Georgia case gets thrown out. Up in New York, President Trump's still fighting to get that case thrown out. Governor Kathy Hochul, as arrogant as can be, she better be careful because she's going to need President Trump's help to clean up this mess of the city. Telling folks this week that she'll only consider pardoning President Trump if he shows some sort of remorse. Kathy Hochul, you can go to hell. Remorse? Remorse for what? The man was charged for absolute nonsense, a campaign violation that didn't exist. You brought in witnesses from the White House that the Supreme Court ruled you weren't allowed to bring in. So there'll be no pardon needed, in my opinion. It's going to come down to the appeals court, which, just like this one we saw in Georgia, I believe is going to make the right decision. And that case, I think, ultimately will be thrown out. And those folks in New York seriously need to be looked into. So as I promised you, our guest today is Congressman Andy Bigg. He sits on the House Oversight and Judiciary Committees, two powerful committees in Congress. And it seems these days Congressman Biggs is not a fan of Mike Johnson and this nonsense of a show that he's been putting on.
I'm excited to announce our Christmas extravaganza is finally here. Get this season's flannel sheets for as low as $59.98. They won't last long, so get them while you can. Our famous My Slippers, they haven't been on sale for over a year. Regularly $119.98, now only $59.98. Our 6-piece towel sets are back in stock with extremely limited quantities, only $29.98. With hundreds of MyPillow products, there's something for everyone on your Christmas list. Bathrobes, duvets, quilts, down comforters, and so much more. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save on all MyPillow products. For example, flannel sheets for as low as $59.98, or our 6-piece towel sets, just $29.98. But that's not all. I'm extending our 60-day money-back guarantee until March 1st of 2025. Plus, all orders over $75 or more ship absolutely free.
Congressman Andy Biggs, I couldn't think of a better person to talk to about this because I know you would have been the first person Lou would have called if Lou were here doing the show today. So I had no choice but to call Congressman Andy Biggs. Congressman, 2 days ago, we saw Mike Johnson try to jam through, we'll call it 1,500 pages. It's a little bit more than 1,500 pages. We'll call it 1,500 pages to give him the benefit of the doubt with the glossary and all that good stuff. For the average person, Congressman, it takes about 40 hours to read the 1,500 pages. If you're getting 16 hours of sleep a night, it'll take you about 2.5 days. If you're on the slower side of reading, it's probably going to take you about 4 to 6 days. Yet Johnson wanted to push this thing down everyone's throats, get it done fast, not let anybody realize what's going on. But as you and I were talking before, I think the new guard picked up on it very quickly. For some of those new members you got, including yourself, who's not a new member, but have just been tired of it. Your thoughts on Mike Johnson? I mean, not starting out too well.
Yeah, this is a problem. Look, if it wasn't for the Freedom Caucus, you wouldn't have had the 72-hour time to read this. And quite frankly, the 72-hour rule that's official, it's an official rule. He's supposed to follow it. Because we followed it this time because the Freedom Caucus was pushing on it, that's why that bill fell apart, right? Because the more people looked at it, the more they're like, man, this stinks. This is bad. You got E15
Right.
in your gas car. You got RFK Stadium issues. You got Congress getting special bennies. I mean, all of these things needed time to be come to the surface. And Speaker Johnson was not going to do that, and I get it because you didn't want the daylight on it, right? I mean, so that's the issue. So I was not pleased with the process, but the process didn't start there. Let's be frank.
Right.
We've known, and Speaker Johnson has known for a year this day would be coming, and he said we would never do a December Omni again. And we would just do the 12 bills. Well, guess what you could have done after you did the September 30th CR? Why didn't you just redo resend the Senate the appropriations bills? Why didn't you do that?
Right.
And so this is a failure on the part of the Speaker.
You had mentioned some aspects about what he wouldn't do. He also told us many times he told us he wouldn't do any sort of CR budget if it didn't include anything border. As you pointed out, the provisions in this 1,500 plus pages were things that would have stopped RFK Jr. when he becomes Secretary of HHS from doing his job, investigating vaccines. The other provision that was very interesting was they let Congress block subpoenas for House data, including emails potentially preventing any investigation into the January 6th committee. Now, we spoke about this when Kevin McCarthy, you spoke about it with Lou, when Kevin McCarthy was getting ousted about just not being transparent and lying to the people. This seems far worse than what Kevin McCarthy did, and Kevin McCarthy got kicked out of there like a dog.
Yeah, look. When you want to protect the J6 committee, there's a huge problem. Look, the investigations of regular committees in Congress have actually now referred her to the incoming AG for potential investigation, right? I mean, this is serious. So it is bad stuff that's in this bill, and to dance around it the way the speaker has done, it's intolerable, right? It's absolutely intolerable.
Do you have confidence? Does your leadership in the House Freedom Caucus have confidence in Mike Johnson to continue to lead this conference? Because it seems like President Trump went right over Mike Johnson, sent J.D. Vance in, and said, get the job done. Lo and behold, chief negotiator President Trump got the thing done.
Well, yeah, I'm not sure that I can speak for the leadership, but I'm not sure that I have much confidence left. But I will just tell you, let me tell you what's happened here is this bill, the successor bill, after much talk, it basically is just a slightly smaller version of the Omni that was such a stinker. You still have $110 billion of the disaster relief with no pay for it all.
Right.
You still have. I mean, that, by the way, that's a Democrat deal. And then the second thing is you've got this debt relief package where you lift the cap for another 2 years, which will add probably anywhere. Let's just be generous and say $4 to $5.5 trillion to the national debt.
Why are the Republicans, Congressman, and you're obviously not one of them, but why are they so terrified to shut down the government? President Trump just won an election. House members, you guys aren't up for re-election another 2 years. By the time it came time to vote, and I'm not saying the voters would remember or not remember, and I'm not trying to be deceptive in any way, but so much time is going to pass between now and the next election when you guys will be able to get presumably, hopefully, so much good stuff done that it's not going to matter. The voters aren't going to care that you guys shut down the government for a little bit. Now is the ripe time. President Trump comes into office 1 month to the day, Congressman. Why are they so terrified to just win this fight once and for all? Because they've never won it.
Look, your point is exactly right. My position was, if you're not going to give us the approach bills, then let's shut it down until we get a new Congress on January 3rd. Why not? I mean, that's right. What is that, 10 days away, roughly?
Right.
And everybody's going to be paid on the first or second. So we come back in the third. Let's go. Let's make sure everything gets done. Why not? And I don't know why they're so afraid. Because the bottom line is, most Americans don't vote you in or out of office on whether you had a lapse in spending. Because, as you know, a lapse in spending doesn't mean it's a government shutdown. I mean, people call it a government shutdown, but it's a lapse in spending. Most of these agencies have loads of money still in their bank account. You're just telling them that you can't spend it until we get back in business and give you the authorization. And 90% of the government stays open and functioning, and that's really how it works. I don't know why everybody's so afraid.
It literally makes no sense to me. It seems like now, Congressman, if there's a perfect time, if all the stars are aligned, it's right now. You just won a massive landslide election. President Trump's approval numbers are the highest they've ever been going into office, among the highest of any Republican going to take office again. You look at everything down the board about Americans agreeing with his agenda. Now it seemed to me like the best time to possibly do it and teach these Democrats a lesson. You got Chuck Schumer did an interview a year and a half ago with Nancy Pelosi making fun of him. Oh, we went into the White House and we got Trump to admit that he'll own it. You didn't get Trump to admit anything. You got Trump to admit that he's the only man with a backbone in Washington, D.C. And you guys went in there with some little cute plan like you were going to get him to slip up. You didn't get anyone to slip up. Why can't these people, if they're not going to shut it down, Congressman, why can't they get a single page bill, one piece of paper? This is what we're funding. This is what we're funding. This is what we're funding. Why does it have to be 1,500 pages of as Lou would call it, hogwash.
It has to be 1,500 pages because then you can hide a lot of stuff. And when you're putting a lot of Christmas tree ornaments on a Christmas tree, it apparently takes a lot of paper to get there. The bottom line is, if you don't, I mean, every negotiator knows this. If you aren't willing to walk away from a bad deal, you're going to be owned every time.
Right.
And this is a bad deal. It was a bad deal earlier this week, and my colleagues aren't willing to walk away from it. I mean, some of them are, but I think the vast majority don't want to.
Congressman, I want to take a quick break here. We're going to come right back with you. And I just want to go a little bit deeper into, on the other side, this debt ceiling and what it means for lifting the debt ceiling. President Trump this week calling to lift the debt ceiling. I also want to go into all the great work that you've already started doing on the border and what it's going to look like in the new year. We're coming right back with Congressman Andy Biggs. He's one of the good guys, folks. I think you guys all know that by now. We're coming right back. Stay with us.
Because of your overwhelming support, our $14.88 MyPillow has been one of the biggest sales in MyPillow history. I couldn't think of a better way to say thank you than to extend our wholesale pricing through Christmas. Get a classic standard MyPillow for only $14.88. Upgrade to a queen size, just $18.88. King size, only $1 more. Get my body pillows for only $29.88. And ready? Multi-use MyPillows, only $9.88. It's perfect time to stock up for Christmas gifts for everyone on your list. Go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to take advantage of our wholesale pricing. Including my classic standard MyPillow is only $14.88. But that's not all. I'm so confident you're going to love our classic MyPillows that I'm going to extend my 60-day money-back guarantee until March 1st, 2025. Plus, orders over $75 ship absolutely free.
Folks, we're back. We're talking with Congressman Andy Biggs. As I mentioned before we went to break, he's one of the few good guys over there. There's about 10 or 12 of them slowly dwindling down. Congressman, I want to get to the debt ceiling. President Trump called for raising the debt ceiling. My opinion, I'm not entirely sure why we do that. Just keep spending. But I want to get your take on it to give to the audience on what it means to raise the debt ceiling and what it will mean for us going forward.
Yeah, so when you raise the debt ceiling, well, the purpose of the debt ceiling is to try to keep you from increasing your structural deficit, so you have to keep borrowing more money, right? So you don't want to keep spending more than you bring in. But when you lift the debt ceiling, that gives you a new limit on your credit card, basically. So now you've got even more money you can spend. The idea was that you would increase your revenue, but that doesn't happen, right? So now you have a bigger gap. And we have had for the last 2 years, because Speaker McCarthy negotiated this with President Biden, that there would be no cap at all.
Oh my
God. And then another stinker part of that for President Trump was that McCarthy put that in the first week of whoever the new president would be, and we hoped and anticipated to be Donald Trump, they would have to deal with that debt ceiling. And I know President Trump doesn't want to deal with that debt ceiling because he's trying to get focused on his agenda. But the problem is when you don't cut spending at the same time that you're increasing the debt ceiling, and in this case, they're going to do a CR that actually increases spending by $110 billion without paying for it, you accelerate the national debt. And that's inflationary. That is helps cause inflation. So I don't really like it. I don't know what it is. Other than I know that President Trump felt like he was kind of handicapped because he's focused on all this other stuff, and he has to go. We didn't want to spend capital going in and trying to fight on the debt ceiling.
Imagine that the things that they do to this man. Like, he doesn't have enough on his plate, Congressman. We all know what President Trump goes through on a daily basis, whether it be having to fend off attacks from the media, whether it has to be dodging literal bullets to his head. Now he's got to go into Washington, D.C. and do Mike Johnson's job. I texted a friend today who was high up in D.C., and I said, who does Mike Johnson answer to? And he says, we don't really know. It seems like the man, and I'm not even being mean, but it seems like the man is just not smart. He keeps getting steamrolled. He seems like a very nice guy. I think you would describe him as a golden retriever, a nice guy who's just going to roll over. It's true. but we don't need nice guys there, Congressman. I mean, how many times are we going to just sit back? I had said this when I had taken over the show after Lou passed away in August. We need to have Mike Johnson, no pun intended, on a tight leash. I mean, what Paul Ryan, you probably remember what Paul Ryan did with setting the agenda to President Trump. I think he started with Obamacare. It was something that ate up the first 2 years of Congress. It wasted 2 years. President Trump was not able to get anything through. Now he goes his next 2 years with a Democratic House, and he's absolutely not able to do much. How much leash are we supposed to give Mike Johnson? I was joking with someone today. I wish Lou was here because I don't think Mike Johnson would have a job right now. There's very few people in this media who are willing to call it out. Everyone wants to be friends with everybody, and nobody wants to call it out. How much leash are we supposed to give Mike Johnson before he either hangs himself or he gets us into trouble?
Well, I think he's kind of already continued in the pattern of the swamp, right? I mean, the pattern of the uniparty. I mean, I think he's done that, and I think there's a lot of people who are really discontented over the last few days with this approach. I mean, this should have been done months ago. He said we were going to do the 12 bills.
Right.
It became hard, so he kind of quit halfway through. But, a real leader says, it's hard, but we're going to continue on because it is the thing that we need to do. Right. And it's our most important deal. So I'm not sure that how this is going to play out in January 3rd, to be honest with you. I know that there's a couple people who've publicly said they're not going to be with him. Others have publicly said they're not committed. Others have privately indicated to me they can't imagine voting for him. I think he's in some bit of trouble, to be honest with you.
So that's January 3rd. Let's hypothetically say probably, I would put it on the 90 percentile, that he does get reelected because you know how Washington works.
Yes.
Someone makes a phone call, and I forgot how Tim Burchett said it. He said, someone comes back to you in the back of the cloakroom, and they whisper in your ear, and all of a sudden you were one way, and now you're the other. Let's hypothetically say Mike Johnson does get in. We now know, and I should know this all too well because Lou was a big part, from what we were told, in helping get Kevin McCarthy out of there. But the rules have now since changed. Mike Johnson, of course, trying to protect himself, knowing he was going to snake us all. What are the rules now if we do want to get Mike Johnson out of there?
Well, they changed the motion to vacate rules that you have to have 9. And which is kind of an odd number in and of itself. I mean, how do you pick 9? I was against that change. If you really want to have top-down, right? If you want to have top-down leadership, then you want to keep the highest number possible, so the leaders are always going to be protected. But if you want bottom-up or grassroots-based participation in your legislative body, you would say, well, we're going to facilitate from time to time removal of the speaker, and that's. When we did it with Kevin McCarthy, myself, and Gates, and the 8 of us that did that, I'm just telling you that the pressure was pretty hefty.
Yeah.
But I think the reason they chose 9 is because there had been 8 of us that took out McCarthy, and so that means the question is, would you ever be able to vacate Mike Johnson? It's going to be very difficult. Whoever the speaker is now, it will be very difficult to vacate.
I'll never forget when you guys were going through that and you guys were going to the votes and slowly starting to dwindle off the names. And I'll never forget Lou called me and he goes, you got to look at Biggs, man. I feel so bad for him because you were walking around the back of there. You looked 10 years older than you are, stressed out because of probably what they were putting you through in the threats. The funny thing was, Congressman, is they told us when McCarthy was removed, it was going to hurt the Republicans beyond repair. Everyone was going to laugh at them. They would never win. Well, what do you call that just happened on November 5th?
Yeah, I call that probably you won't see another landslide like that
ever, simply
because of the way the country is realigning right now, right? And very difficult to see with the media and the social media in the 24 hours. It's going to be very difficult to have the type of victory that Donald Trump had. Donald Trump is a once, perhaps in multiple generations, maybe once even in 100-year type of leader. He's charismatic, he's visionary, he's tough, he's brutal, but people relate. He's relatable. All the things that a true leader has. And you had this incredible demarcation. Let's just face it. You don't typically have an apples to apples run, because here we had Trump, you had 4 years under Trump, you had 4 years under Harris. You could actually compare, and there was an overwhelming rejection of the hard left socialist mantra in America. And that left us with Donald Trump. And he's a populist, perhaps, a conservative, perhaps, but the bottom line is he stated a very clear agenda. And that agenda, really, in my opinion, is the right agenda, and it can be enacted, but you got to have the right legislative makeup. And we're going to be skinny. I'm just telling you, two vote margin. You get 3 people or 4 people, and any bill's dead.
Right.
So you have to be a leader, and don't know if we got one.
Speaking of leaders, you just brought forward some important legislation, in my opinion, called the Midnight Rules Relief Act. Can you tell the audience what you're able to achieve now in putting a check on these career corrupt bureaucrats who run this damn swamp?
Well, so if this bill, I hope, will become law, and if it becomes law, here's the way to think of it: every year, the bureaucratic state enacts hundreds of thousands of regulations that we treat as law.
Right.
And Congress is supposed to review those, and doesn't review very many at all. In fact, the most we've ever reviewed through the Congressional Review Act in any one year is 17. 17. And so what my bill does is it changes the look back period and says we're going to look back longer. And also it changes the process, because right now, if you have one rule in EPA, let's say there's 20 rules that EPA has done that need to be reviewed and tossed out if possible, you can only do one at a time.
Sounds like government hard at work.
Yeah. So right. So it's designed to keep Congress from doing its job. So I'm trying to get Congress back involved. So now you can say you could review 20, 30, 40 in the same bill. So you could have a hearing on it, get them debated, decide which ones really have to go. And by the way, if you, in the look back period in my bill, which is consistent with the current law, if you were to eliminate all the Biden bills, or excuse me, Biden regulations that have come in, savings of $1.4 trillion.
Would you look at that? See, you're a man who deserves that $34,000 raise that they were offering up. For anyone who's been on Twitter lately, I recommend you go look at Dan Crenshaw's Twitter feed. The man has been having an absolute meltdown. Now, he's not one of these good guys. He plays it off like he's a good guy, but he's not. I won't ask for Congressman Biggs' opinion on him, but I just recommend everyone go look at Dan Crenshaw's Twitter about getting that pay raise and the meltdown he's been having with regard to it. Congressman, before we wrap up here, I want to talk about two or three more things. The J6 committee and Liz Cheney. Yeah. I watch CNN all day long because I like to figure out what these sick people are thinking about. I'll turn on MSNBC. I can't watch Fox News anymore. It's too much for me. So I'll watch CNN, and these folks, I mean, Jim Acosta today almost melted down when he found out that Big Fauci was thrown off the case in Georgia, which should have never been on in the first place. But the January 6th committee, Donald Trump's unhinged. He's tweeting out at 3 o'clock in the morning that Liz Cheney's gotten herself into trouble. Now, this isn't Donald Trump's words. This is Congressman Barry Loudermilk, the man who put out the report on it. They're saying President Trump is out for retribution, but it was Liz Cheney who spoke with a witness without her lawyer. It was Liz Cheney who went behind every single person's back to go ahead and do that. It was Liz Cheney who tweeted out last week that if any lawyers want to look into her, that they should be careful because there's retribution as it pertains to the bar laws. This is a thug. This woman is a thug. But yet it's President Trump who's going for retribution on this lady who tried to ruin his life and maybe is the reason he got shot at.
Yeah, Liz Cheney, it wasn't just President Trump she was going after. She was going after some of his most ardent supporters.
Right.
And so the allegations that have come forward from Barry Loudermilk's committee, by the way, Barry it's been kind of a task force type of thing. They really need to expand it, make it a real committee, give it a little bit more resources, et cetera. But what you find is, or what they found, or what they're alleging, is that she not only did she suppress exculpatory evidence, that she tampered with witnesses, but she also potentially suborned perjury. She was going behind and actually helping a witness get a different lawyer, one that would be more conducive. She encouraged and helped a witness make a complete substantive rewrite of her previous under oath testimony. And then all of that, and then she suppressed all of the evidence that would have come forward to contradict and impeach that witness. So those are the types of allegations that are incredibly serious. And Barry Loudermilk, just congressman from Georgia, has done a great job investigating that. And I'm happy that he's done so. But she's now saying, look, if anybody's going to come after me or check on me, I'm going to double down on you. I'm going after you.
It's insane. So yeah. I don't consider that retribution. I mean, I say this all the time on this show. I don't want the Republicans to break the law. I don't want the Republicans to recreate the law. I just want them to follow the law. And if you follow the law, Congressman, the law leads you to that this woman needs to be investigated. You sit on two of the most powerful, not two of the most powerful, I think two of the powerful committees there, Oversight and Judiciary. Do you think you guys under Comer or Jordan are going to take a look at this and look at some of these people whose lives have been ruined? I mean, the thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars spent on lawyers for Bannon and Navarro and Dan Scavino, just all unnecessary nonsense. I mean, the buck should have stopped with Congressman when Cassidy Hutchinson came in and said Trump tried to take over the beast and drive the thing to the Capitol. Yeah. Believe it or not, there was mainstream media outlets who were covering that as truth. I mean, what has the world come to?
Yeah, I mean, I hope our committees keep working on it. I know Barry's committee is going to keep working on it, but I hope there's a collaboration there, and I hope there's a referral to the Attorney General Pam Bondi, who can come in and use her subpoena power as well, and you get some due process and get some warrants to get records. Look, we think that Benny Thompson was involved. We think Benny Thompson. We don't know where all of the documents are that Barry Loudermilk has been trying to get, but I'm just going to tell you, we want there to be due process and justice. That's the American way. And if there's been an actual crime committed, then there needs to be recompense there. But here's the other aspect of it, because you brought this up. There are a lot of other individuals whose lives were attacked because of this. My life was attacked. They came after me and have continued to tell lies about me, literally for 5 years. And the left, they told the lies so often that they simply believe them now. Yeah. And that's the type of thing that calls and screams for justice. And that's what we want. That's what I think we want. We're not looking for retribution. We're looking for justice, because if you're going to have a freedom in a society, there has to be a rule of law. That way you can protect all people from the bullies and those who would abuse the system. And then you can have freedom. But if you don't have rule of law, you will never have freedom.
You mentioned truth, justice, in the American way. That was the mantra that is of this show. That's the mantra that Lou came up with on the show. You brought up a good point, and it was the lies that they spewed about you and everybody else. You guys have something in Congress called congressional immunity. It was what allowed pencil neck Adam Schiff to go out and run rampant and do whatever the hell he wanted. How do we get rid of that so that there is some sort of accountability? We see ABC just paying out $15 million to Donald Trump for lying. It should be like that. If you lie and you knowingly lied, not made a mistake, but you knowingly lied, you need to pay the price for it. So how do we get rid of this congressional immunity that protects far too many people, Congressman?
Well, congressional immunity is related to the speech and debate clause, which is in the U.S. Constitution. And believe me, I know it's bad now, but believe me, if you go back through history, you're going to sometimes I would think we're pikers. If you go back to the pre-Civil War era, and you look at poor Abe Lincoln and the attacks on Abe Lincoln when he was a member of Congress, and then as he's running for president, those were outrageous. I mean, ours are outrageous and libelous and slanderous. And quite frankly, I don't care if Adam Schiff lies about me, but if he goes out and leaks material that came from the Intelligence Committee, that should be a prosecution. I don't care if Joe the ragman is sitting at home in his underwear and he's saying hateful things about me. That's his business. He can say that. I mean, Thomas Jefferson said, "Yeah, we'll let him do that. We're not going to do that."
Right.
But and I don't even care if look, we get called racist and everything else. That's where this body has to internally monitor itself and right the ship and say, look, you know what? That's too much. You've crossed the line. Because routinely you'll go to the floor and they'll say, these guys are liars, they're racist, they're Nazis and all that. That's when we have to say, no, you can't say that. And so the Judiciary Committee, we get that a lot. And so we've learned that the rule is, I want the words taken down, because if we take your words down, that means you're done for the day. It means you can't even speak anymore. Beautiful. No matter what. And that's the internal monitoring that must go on if we're going to restore some sense of civility in Congress. Yeah,
you're absolutely right. And nobody cares. And Elon Musk put it so perfectly. The First Amendment is for speech that's not so popular. Nobody cares if someone's out there calling you ugly or lazy or whatever. But when you start doing things, calling somebody a Nazi is not something taken lightly. And I'm not a snowflake, and I'm not somebody who gets offended over everything. But that's something that ruins someone's life. Calling somebody a rapist, Congressman, ruins somebody's life. Look at those Duke lacrosse players and what they went through. Their lives were never the same after they were accused of rape, and it turns out it never happened. But all you had to do was say the word, and you look what happened. I want to conclude with something that's near and dear, I think, to everybody. It was near and dear to Lou. I know it's near and dear to you, and I think it's probably, if not the sole reason, one of the top three reasons President Trump won on November 5th, and that's the border. Do you think we can get this thing secured? I saw something the other day. If we can, in my opinion, if we can start penalizing some of these folks who hire these illegals. Senator Mike Lee has put forward a bill to get all these illegals off of our healthcare system and off of our schooling system. If you do those two things, in my opinion, you probably get this thing turned around in less than 2 years, because if they're not making any money, they're not going to want to come. If there's no government subsidies for them, they can't afford to be here. You couple that with a wall, and I think you've got a secure country. What's your thoughts as it pertains to closing this border and securing the country?
Well, yeah, I mean, if they can't get a job, they're not coming, right? That's the first thing. And then if they get here and they find they can't get a job and you don't give them benefits, they're going to self-repatriate. And I think those two things are critical. Building the wall is critical, but I also believe this: you have to start removing people. Yeah. Because once you start removing people, I guarantee you're going to see self-repatriation. They're going to say, "Oh my gosh," it's going to be just as effective as the Remain in Mexico policy, because the people were like, well, I'm not going to sell everything I own and go on, give it to a coyote and go on up. If as soon as I get up there, they're going to tell me I got to wait in Mexico. They're not going to do that. So the same thing goes when you're removing people. They're saying, like, I'm not going to spend everything I have to get up there. And that will immediately turn off the spigot. The other thing is, everybody's on the table. If you're in a sanctuary city and they're turning you loose, like San Diego County wants to turn loose rapists, right? For instance, back in the community, and ICE hears about it, and they're tracking down somebody that they have a hold on, and they go to that house, and the guy's living there with 6 other people. Right. They're going to run those 6 people, and if 5 of them are illegally in the country, all 6 of them are going to go. They're not going to be like the Biden administration. And guess what that does? That sends them home. You know how I know it's going to work? Because the ambassador of the Philippines, the Filipino ambassador to the U.S., said, look, if you're illegally in the country and you're from the Philippines, you should seriously think about returning to the Philippines. And I agree with that. And we're seeing that already. You know, the going rate for crossing the borders doubled from 5,000 a head to 10,000 a head. That's because people anticipate enforcement of the law the day President Trump comes into office. And that's what Congress should be working on.
You know, the Marxist Democrats in cities like New York, if you have an illegal gun, they let you go ahead and surrender your gun without any sort of repercussions. I think a good idea for President Trump is let these people self-deport and see if we can get a head start on this thing. But if anyone who watches Tom Homan, that man means business. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about if he means what he says and he says what he means, because Tom Homan, I know him personally, means business, and he's going to get everybody out of here. He told Caitlin Collins when she said, put a number on it, he goes, everybody. And it's true. You break the law. The thing that drives me nuts is the health care. It's not a civil liberty for us Americans. You remember Obamacare? They made it a fine if we didn't go out there and pay for health care, yet these illegals come to this country wide open. Come on, come to our schools. You don't speak English. You can sit in a classroom with these American kids who speak English and do whatever you want. Go to the hospital, use the hospital systems. We're going to learn what it's like to live in a third world country if we don't get this under control, in my opinion. I want to wrap up with the drug cartels. How do we proceed with them? We want to go fight wars overseas. I spoke to Colonel Doug McGregor the other day. We want to go fight wars overseas and send our military over there. The Democrats tell us, don't use the military here at home. It's bad optics. We have a war at our southern border, a war that we can actually win for the first time, win a war in, I don't know, you put a timeline on the last time we won a war, that we can actually win, and they don't want to fight it because it's bad optics. How do we get rid of these drug dens that are killing hundreds of thousands of Americans a year, Congressman?
Well, so I've spent the last year on the drug cartel or border cartel task force. The chairman is Dan Crenshaw. I know you don't like Dan.
Oh,
but Dan has actually done a great job on that, because he and I have total agreement on this. Well, maybe not total, but 98% agreement. But we have worked hard on this. And I will tell you this, we've got ideas on how you use the military. I talked to Tom Homan this morning. He's got ideas on how you use the military. They're already trying to figure out how you use the military. You're not violating posse comitatus, but you can use them to help transport.
yeah.
And once you start going at their commodity and you start looking at their cash and their income, guess what? They dry up a little bit. And it's I don't know that you ever get to 100%, but I can tell you this, you can get to where you actually secure the border and you can interdict and bring people down. And quite frankly, we want to actually have a relationship with Mexico. I mean, Mexico, I love Mexico. I used to go to Mexico all the time. Here's the deal. President Sheinbaum, I think, is going to work with President Trump. But there's a lot of corruption down there, and the cartels control whole states down there, brother. Mm-hmm. And also, and I don't know if you saw this, but just since President Trump has come in, Canada has committed about $1.5 billion to try to secure their border. Yeah. That's what happens when you have a strong leader, and it's going to impact those cartels.
I got an idea. If they don't want to play ball, why don't we open our southern border one way? Let's build a road from Mexico up to Canada. We'll even put a train system because they'll save us the money in the long run, and we'll put it up there. These drug cartels are terrorist organizations. We had no problem going into Iraq and destabilizing the place. We had no problem creating ISIS. We had no problem destabilizing Afghanistan, leaving everything behind. It's a war that needs to be fought, and I think President Trump and Tom Homan's going to do it with the help of congressmen like you. Congressman Andy Biggs of the great state of Arizona, thanks so much for joining us today, brother. I appreciate it.
Thanks. Have a Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to you and your family, Congressman.
Thank you.
Thank you all for being with us today. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did speaking with Congressman Andy Biggs. Lou was a big fan of Congressman Biggs, so to speak to him sort of gives me that connection back to Lou. As I said, I miss him so very much, even more now as we get through the holiday season. It hits home a little bit harder. So thank you all, folks, for being with us today. I really appreciate you joining us each and every day here on the Great America Show. We're going to see you right back here tomorrow, I hope. Same time, same place, where our quest for truth, justice, and the American way continues. See you back here tomorrow, folks. Until then, may God bless you, may God bless America, and may God bless the great Lou Dobbs.